I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. It is Monday, and sometimes there can be some cobwebs on the interwebs, and we've got to clear them out, make sure that things are working. Looks like we're alive on YouTube, which means the others are right behind us, and that means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Grubler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group, and today we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. We've been covering this trial for a long time now, and the court is taking a little bit of a pause, a break in the trial, so we don't actually have court today, we don't have court tomorrow, we don't have court on Wednesday, but we're back on Thursday for testimony. But that doesn't mean that the trial has stopped or that activity has stopped behind the scenes. It's actually quite the opposite. A lot of activity is taking place over the weekend. We had a whole laundry list of new issues that we could dive into, and we're going to on the show. And so we're going to talk about a few things regarding Epstein. We're going to start off by picking up where we left off last week. We remember that we were reviewing a whole slew of exhibits. We're going to just pick up and take a look at some of this stuff. This is one exhibit that we haven't seen yet, and so we're going to bounce around a couple of Epstein's different properties over into New Mexico. Of course, that was the Zorro Ranch. We'll take a look at that from an aerial photograph, from a sort of the map overview, and we can see how secluded it is. I mean, it really is like in the middle of nowhere, which makes it that much creepier. And so we're going to go through that because, as we've talked about, this exhibit, the exhibits in this trial continue to leak out every single day after, or they're not leaking out, they're being published after the trial concludes. And so we're able to go through them after the fact, and we'll do that. In our second segment, we're going to take a look at what's happening with Government Exhibit 52. Government Exhibit 52 was a very important exhibit. This was the Black Book, Epstein's Black Book, with all the contact information. And so it looks something like this. And so part of our second segment, we're going to be actually going through the Black Book. That's just a preview of what we're going to be looking at. And the whole document, the entire Black Book, or at least the alleged document, the alleged Black Book, just something that's floating around out there on Twitter and elsewhere, is available in the mind map, available at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Then in our final segment, we're going to be talking about this guy. He actually is Ghislaine Maxwell's brother. This is Ian Maxwell, and over the weekend, actually, I think this was on Friday, he came out and he gave an interview over with The Spectator, and he had some very interesting little tidbits to share, in particular about Ghislaine Maxwell and what some of her thoughts are relating to Epstein's death. Did she think that Epstein killed himself? It's a good question. So we're going to go and check in and see what Ian thinks about Ghislaine. Obviously, we have not heard from Ghislaine, but he is close to her, and so he'll tell us, presumably, what she thinks. I'm also curious what you think. Do you think Epstein killed himself? Do you think that he was somebody who was killed? Do you think he's still alive? What do you think? We have a new poll feature as a part of this show that looks like this, and you can see you, the audience, get to participate in the program. You get to be a part of it. I love it. So if you want to vote on the poll, you can do that as long as you're here live. Obviously, if you're watching this in a recording, then you're not going to be able to vote on it. But if you are watching this, then you can go and vote. I just reshared the poll form, and you can chime in. Did Epstein kill himself? Was he killed? Is he still alive? Or do you not know? Any one of those is, of course, valid. So if you also want to be a part of the program, a part of the show, the place to do that with questions is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got a form over there. It looks just like this. And we are taking super chats. Of course, super chats pop in. They look like that right on the screen. Dapper Dave submitted that yesterday. I think we forgot that one. I apologize, Dapper Dave. But he said, Robert, I have something to super chat on, but it's redacted. P.S. Julian Assange is next. We will cover Julian Assange. Still waiting for him to sort of be received by the U.S. government, and we'll see where that goes. We've got a clips channel. If you're looking for clips, check those out at Robert Gruler ESQ Clips. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into the actual content. Ghislaine Maxwell trial is on a bit of a pause. The court said that for 3 days, no actual in-court trials, but that doesn't mean we can't see the exhibits that continue to leak out from the preceding week. We have a number of them that we have not looked at on this channel before, and we can sort of peer in and see what the jurors are seeing. And remember, that's why we're looking at these things. The jurors are trying to concoct a broad overview, a mind map in their minds about how this all connects. And it's a lot. It's complicated. And you and I on this channel, we have just been covering the transcripts, what some amazing reporters and journalists have been talking about from their reporting, but we haven't really seen a lot of these exhibits. And so we haven't even seen the faces of many of these victims and a lot of the people that are testifying, because this is all federal court. And so when we get to see these images, we get to see what the jurors are seeing. This is one of them. One of Epstein's properties, of course, this is Little St. James out near the Caribbean, the British Islands. You can see this is Exhibit 326. And this was part of the testimony we heard from Vysotsky and a number of other people who were communicating about this island. And we're going to spend just a quick minute sort of touring around it so we can piece it all together, because this is where a lot of those nefarious activities took place. This is where all of the people who were on Vysotsky's planes were flying and landing, and this is where it all happened. And so where is this place? As we can see, it's just off of Puerto Rico. It's out there. You can see this island, Little St. James. It is north of Venezuela. It is off of the Dominican Republic and Cuba. You can see off of Florida. You probably can fly somewhere near, maybe San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then scoot over onto Little St. James or somewhere in that area. But this is the world. This is the part of the world that we're talking about. If you're not familiar with it, if you zoom in on this, we've got Little St. James. You can see it's this little island here. And I actually believe that I have a link to this. And so let me see if I can just open this up, because, yeah, I think I opened this up because I want to sort of take a quick moment and zoom in on this. This is the actual island that Epstein was flying to. So this is Little St. James via Google Earth. And so as we poke around, we're going to be able to take a look at some of the different landmarks on here. And so we were just taking a look here. Here is one image. You can see sort of this is off of one of the coasts. I got a big, looks like a dock hanging off there for boats. And I mean, it's a really, really nice image. And so back to Google Maps, we can see we can sort of bounce around the island. Not real high resolution photographs, but we can see it looks like maybe a pool out there for some lounging activities. We've got some greenery, number of different properties all around the island. This looks like it may have been that area where there was the dock. You see this dock is over here. And so, not a terribly huge island, just a number of different buildings. But if somebody were giving you an island, you'd say, yeah, it's not big. It's not that big, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take it. I could probably make do with it. So, this is what it looks like. And it's very secluded. This is one of those themes that we're going to keep seeing with Epstein's properties. He's very secluded. He kind of isolates himself from other people. And so this is Little St. James. If you're going to bring in somebody that you're trafficking, and if you're going to want to make sure that they feel isolated and like they can never possibly leave, it seems like it might be a pretty good spot, because when you start to zoom out, first of all, you're on an island, but when you zoom out, you realize you're on a pretty tiny island that's in a pretty tiny spot in the middle of the ocean, not even remotely close to anything. So, very, very secluded, and exactly what you would expect somebody like Epstein to use. Very convenient for him to maneuver people over to that area. So we've got more photographs. Now, these photographs actually were not part of the court record. These came out from, these were taken, it seems like somebody has been flying around this island very recently. This was on December 4th, I believe these photographs were taken of this year, of 2021, kind of surveilling the property, taking photographs. This was a very interesting part on the island. This is one of those buildings that, people are speculating, what is this thing? What the heck's going on here? This is just, an aerial view of this weird building. Many people, have conspiracy theories about what this is. And you can just see as we go around the property, there's the pool that we were talking about. It is private property, no trespassing. This sign is from a photograph taken from 2019. So this is before, a lot of the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff started heating up. And then as we continue around, we see, just more footage, more photographs. People are going around the island and taking pictures. Now, this is that one photograph and this is that one building that raises a lot of eyebrows. What is this weird little bizarre, building out there? Is this a man cave? Is this a dungeon? Is this some place where there are human sacrifices or rituals? Does he go out there and play Halo? What does he do? I don't know what's going on. So a lot of people have questions about it. We can see you just kind of bounce around. Now we get to another exhibit. Now this is back from Palm Beach. And so we leave Little St. James and we go back to Palm Beach. This is back from the Florida raid. And you can see that this is the kitchen. Now, we have not seen this side of the exhibits. The other, exhibits were a little bit more, salacious. Not too much to really glean from here. Looks like a pretty standard kitchen. Kind of has that 90s vibe, but it's white. And it's kind of back in style now, these 90s kitchens. But again, not too much to glean from here. Now, if you go over here and look at the books, who knows what they were able to pick up. If they were able to find anything out of there worthwhile, or if there's anything, or is it just a regular standard kitchen with a Foreman grill or whatever that is. So you can see we now move around to other parts of the property. Again, this is in Palm Beach, so it has that, sort of that Palm Beach, Florida vibe to it. Somebody's looking at, it looks like furniture, coverings, or, you know, fabrics, samples, or whatever that is on the floor. The rest of this, not too much to report. Not too much is being redacted. We see some woman over here on the right from law enforcement who's standing out there. Part of the raid, part of the investigation, but nothing salacious, nothing that we're going to see that is too interesting. Turn around, same type of thing here. We see a router on the back. This is an office, you know, not even really any technology, no computers. We see this plastic or whatever that style was back from the 90s. If you're a 90s person, you know, a 90s child, you remember that. I certainly do. We have the stairway. Again, not too much interesting here. This is going over to the New York apartment, and so there's some interesting. This was interesting. You can see this photograph. This is not part of the trial. This came from, I think, the New York Post posted this one, and you can see the crowbar breaking and entering from police during the FBI raid. This is back when they went into his New York location and you know, got all the hard drives, and we saw the photographs and all of that, and so they actually just rammed that the crowbar right in there and pried that puppy right open. And we also see that JE was sort of mounted here into the stone on the wall, and that has been removed. So somebody has peeled that out off of the wall for, I guess, memory, for eternal memory. Now, we also remember that we had a lot of testimony from a lot of people, including just about everybody. In particular, Annie Farmer was the last one that we heard about, was some contact over at that Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. And so now we get a little bit more details on this ranch. This was that really creepy ranch. If you've been with this channel for some time, this was the place that Epstein wanted to concoct his future plan for saving humanity. He was going to, I guess, inseminate thousands of women, and they were all going to live at this ranch, and he was going to procreate and spread his seed for the benefit of mankind, or something insane like that. And this was like a real deal. We covered this as a real story. He was telling people about this in different medical journals, and he was actually researching this. How do we do this? And how do we, you know, make this a real thing? And he's talking to like Harvard scientists, and they're all going, what's a little strange there, but nope. You know, this is Jeffrey Epstein. Back at the time, he's sort of the pinnacle in the global social hierarchy. Everybody wants his ear for some reason, and nobody's telling him no. So we go back to this mansion now. This is in New Mexico. This was the one, I think Jane was the first person to testify about this. In fact, let's take a quick pause and check out the mind map and just get our bearing straight on this one, because I think it was Jane. If we zoom in on this, yeah, this 14, I think, well, it may not have been Jane. In fact, it may have been Kate. Yeah, so they're kind of all over the place. But we go back to this, and we can see this is the entry. This is Exhibit 328. This is the government submitting this, and they're going to be showing all of the jurors about this ranch. And again, the theme that we're talking about is sort of isolation. He's taking them to Little St. James, and he is absconding them from their parents, and he's grooming them. 5-point step until he's able to seclude them away. It goes from the physical touch to the massage, all the way up to the more illegal touching. But they've got to get him secluded, and they tell their moms that they're going on vacation with a billionaire, and he's going to help them go to Interlochen School of Arts and the School for the Gifted in New York, or whatever it's called. And you can see, as we're going into Zorro Ranch, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You see, this photograph was the same one that it looks like. This is Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre, of course, is the person who started a lot of this. Virginia Giuffre was actually suing Maxwell. And part of the reason why we have those perjury charges that Maxwell is facing is because of Virginia Giuffre and her lawsuit. Yeah, and so Virginia Giuffre is this woman we can see here. Her lawyer is Sigrid McCauley, and there was a 2016 defamation lawsuit. So this is her, and then this is her back on the Zorro Ranch. Now, the government is going through and they're submitting every one of these exhibits, and you can see there's a lot here. This is Exhibit 323. This is the New Mexico Ranch. Now, if you look at this, it doesn't look, you know, all that ominous. It looks like, oh, it kind of looks like a hotel maybe, or like a nice, you know, getaway ranch where you can just go and, you know, write a novel or something like that. Doesn't look nefarious at all. But when you start to really dive into this thing, you kind of realize it really is sort of in the middle of nowhere. And we're going to zoom out on this and see exactly what's going on. But before we do that, I want to show you something else that's kind of interesting here. This entire property is for sale. Let's do it this way. Let's start with the actual map. And we'll poke around and we'll sort of zoom out on where this thing is located. So if you go over on Google Maps and you take a look at the Zorro Ranch, and we zoom in, you'll see that that same building is right here that we saw. And this is that little sort of weird labyrinth or garden area, kind of a landscape feature, or it's a place where he sacrifices, you know, the blood of virgins or something. You know, I have no idea what's going on here, but this is it. Now, this is a big portion of the property. This is not it, of course. The ranch is huge. This is Zorro Ranch Road. And again, we're talking isolation. We talked about where Little St. James was, and we just keep zooming out. And there's nothing around. Got Highway 41 over there. We just keep zooming on out. Nothing, 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 nothing. Almost as far as the eye can see. Until we start to get really far out, then we start to see some cities coming in. We've got Albuquerque over here to the west. We've got Santa Fe up here to the north. But really, when you zoom in, it's really secluded. We've got this one house here. We've got a number of different roads that you can follow all the way around through different parts of the property. So for example, if you leave this little human sacrifice center down here at the center of this property, and you go on this road a little bit north, go to the west, you make a right, you go up here, and then you're going to see all sorts of different parts of these other houses that are sort of tucked away, secluded up in the hillside. So we've got this house, right? Don't know what that one is. But again, nothing around. You drive a little bit further up on the road and you have another house that's tucked away up in here. And so if you're going to be doing something, yeah, it's kind of a good spot because there's nothing around as far as the eye can see. Remember, some of the testimony from Visosky was talking about the landing strip. And so let's say you're coming up on the 41. I'm going to go visit the Epstein Ranch, and you're coming in here. You're going to make a right onto Zorro Ranch Road off of Highway 41. You're going to stop right here at this sort of center complex, which has a lot of different buildings, and you might want to check in there and make sure that you're good. That's the entry point of the ranch. Over here, we can see that we have the airstrip now. So it's a huge portion, right? This is where Epstein would actually land his planes. Arguably, Ghislaine Maxwell was there as well on some of those flights. And as you just navigate around the property, you can see, I mean, it's a very, very big piece of property with buildings and sort of interesting things scattered all over the place. Now, this property is for sale. And so we can actually take a look at the listing because I happen to pull it up. And let's do that now, shall we? Because it is interesting. We can take a look at the Zorro Ranch. Here it is. This is the property. Now, this puppy is going for $27.5 million. So when you look at it, zoom out just a little bit, you can see some of these features. We've got a main residence. We've got a caretaker's residence. We have a ranch central. We've got adobe, yellow house, red house, bunk houses, firehouse. They've got a heated garage with 7 bays located nearby. It is a nice property. Looks like it has a little bit of a barn, a firehouse, something to that effect. The yellow house, the red house, you can see all of that. It has a greenhouse, huge stables. You can really sort of zoom in and see the detail all over the place, right? Very, very big property. It's got a tennis court. Here's the blue house, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, includes 2 vehicle garage, tennis court, basketball goals. The log cabin, 710 square foot cabin. Here's the airstrip. Now, the airstrip, it has grass, approximately 4,400 feet in length. This location is equipped with a hangar and a helipad. The potential to extend this landing strip has been explored, and this information is available to the next owner. So if you too want a place where you can traffic your goods and you got $27.5 million, this is a good spot to do it. The land, it's located on a scenic route approximately 35 minutes from Santa Fe. Property includes 7,575 deeded acres plus 423 acres of BLM leased land. So that's Bureau of Land Management leased land. So huge property in the middle of nowhere. It looks like it has a watering hole. And so that is the Epstein compound, once again, basically in the middle of nowhere. And you can see once you're there at that little red dot, that's the sacrificial home. You are kind of alone. Again, 35 minutes. The closest right way is going to be north on the 41 up until you sort of get to the 14, up until you reach Santa Fe. 35-minute ride. So you're not going anywhere, which is why you got to fly in there. And that is this exhibit. This is what the government is showing the jurors. So that's been submitted. Now here's just a couple other photographs to kind of just show you the scale. You know, this is what it looks like. Completely isolated, not easily accessible at all. Number of different roads will go in there, but yeah, once you're there, you're kind of there. You can see a different angle of the sacrificial garden, interior of the ranch or of the stables. Terrible view. Tennis court if you're feeling energetic on that Saturday morning. We've got a log cabin. We've got a nice library. I'll give them this. This library looks pretty dang good. I'd be happy with that library. But that is it for the exhibits. And so a lot of this stuff is pretty benign, right? We don't see anything that's redacted. We've seen a lot of stuff that came out that was very creepy. We saw these huge portions of walls and artwork that had these big black frames that were censoring out something that must have been pretty horrendous. And so here we don't see any of that. You know, we don't really see any weird figures or figurines or anything like that. This is mostly, you know, kind of vanilla, other than the fact that it is extremely isolated. It's located in the middle of nowhere, and we're seeing this pattern now pick itself up from Little St. James over to New Mexico, and the list goes on and on. And so we are going to continue with additional coverage as more exhibits leak out or are published. We'll continue to talk about those here. Next up, we're talking about what's next. Oh yes, Ghislaine Maxwell docket update. We've got a lot of activity taking place in the courts. Now, trial is not in session, but doesn't mean that we're not done or not watching what's happening. We've got this item. This is Government Exhibit 52. This is a very contentious piece of evidence that both sides have been fighting over for some period of time, and we're going to take a look at this in particular. Now, if you are somebody who is a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, let's just get a quick pause. And I may be making this entire mind map just, you know, available. But let's see here. If you are a supporter over there and you have access to this mind map like this user does right here, whoever that is, guest number 8, and you click on Jeffrey Epstein and you zoom in here, you're going to see this black book. Now, if you click this little paper clip, you can see that the entire book, or at least what some people are saying is the entire book, a 92-page book, starts in alphabetical order with Abby, and it works its way all the way down. And you can just start scrubbing through names here. A lot of different names. And this is that same testimony that Juan Alessi was talking about. Remember, Juan Alessi was the individual who was the housekeeper for Epstein. And he was saying that as part of his house duties, they had to put a copy of this black book by the bedroom tables, by the side tables, where the phones were. We didn't have iPhones back in the 1990s, so they had to use these books. And so the whole thing, allegedly, is floating around on the internet. Remember, there are just, you know, dozens and dozens of lawsuits and discovery and different documents that have been exchanged as a result of Epstein and Maxwell. So you have to take all of these different documents with a grain of salt. But you can see all the names in here, right? Very, 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 very extensive. So don't know exactly where this came from, but it is being claimed that this is the entire Epstein Black Book, or at least one of them. Remember, there were multiple versions of this that continued to come out as the case progressed. And so, yeah, some people taking a look at that right now, which is Great. All right. So let's take a look at the court docket now. Trial is not in session, but we do have docket updates, quite a lot of them, actually. We're going to start with one that came out last week, but it was from 12/9, and it's talking about that black book that we were just talking about specifically. And it specifically, you're going to see it says here, it's Government Exhibit 52. The judge came out and issued a memorandum opinion and order. Both sides are fighting about this. We have been battling, can we get this exhibit admitted? Can the jurors see that document that I just showed you? Yes or no? Can they see it without redactions? Can they see the whole thing? Yes or no? We don't know. So the judge issued a ruling. We're going to read through this ruling. It is interesting. It's actually a pretty nice little win there for the prosecutors. So we'll get back to that. We had an entry on 12/9, nothing too much to report there. We have some transcripts and notice that the transcripts were posted. We can't see any of that, of course, so we can skip over those. Then we have a couple different letters coming in. We're going to see that this letter limiting the instruction for this document, so for Exhibit 52, Government Exhibit 52 for the Black Book, we're going to talk about that. And then you're going to see these two letters that came out on Sunday, on 12/12, a letter from the U.S. prosecutors over to the court, and then a letter from Bobbi Sternheim also to the court saying, we've got to talk about these witnesses. Remember that the government has rested now. Their case in chief is now done. They have no more evidence to present. Kind of a little bit short, doesn't it feel like it? 8 days of testimony. We had 10 days of actual trial plus a sick day plus opening arguments, kind of about 8 days. Started late, most of those, maybe 7.5 days of testimony by the government prosecutors. Now it's the defense turn. And the defense has disclosed a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to talk about it. Probably more witnesses than the government, which is pretty interesting. But let's talk about this Black Book first, shall we? A lot of people are going through that document that I shared, and here we can see that people are starting to highlight some pretty big names. Somebody wrote Case Simon. Okay, whoever that is, don't know, but you can see people are going through this and they're identifying names. So we're having an issue with this. Judge is specifically saying, all right, here's my final ruling. They're talking about the government versus the defense. Government wants to submit this book. The defense does not want to submit it. Judge Nathan says, all right, boys and girls. The government seeks to admit what's been identified as Exhibit 52. And they want to submit a redacted version of that document. The defense objects to that. They say it's not authentic and it's irrelevant. It's hearsay. The admissibility of this exhibit has been the subject of a lot of fighting. This includes supplemental briefing. We've authenticated a number of witnesses. We talked to Juan Alessi. He's the housekeeper. He underwent direct examination, and the defense asked him a bunch of questions. The court reserved a ruling on this exhibit until after his testimony came out. The court now overrules the defendant's objections. Guess what? Government Exhibit 52 sounds like it's coming in. Uh-oh. Well, I wonder how redacted it's going to be, because there's a lot of interesting names in there, including this guy's. Alec Baldwin? What are you doing in Epstein's Black Book there, my friend? A lot of interesting names. You can see this one came out of this section, apparently. Probably the same guy, I would guess. And so it doesn't mean anything. You can't equate guilt for Alec Baldwin just because he's in somebody's phone book. Who knows if he wanted to be in the phone book? Anybody can just add you to their phone book. You can't be guilty by association, can you? I don't know. Maybe you can. So we have some other names that are popping up. We've got Neil Andrew or Andrew Neil. Apparently this is somebody over, in the UK. He's a chairman of Sky TV, publisher of The Scotsman. Apparently he's in that list. And so you can see there are some big names. Alec Baldwin, that guy, some other UK people. A lot of concern about this. So can we get this in? Is it reliable? The defense says it's not. We can't even prove it's authentic. We have no idea what it says. It's an out-of-court statement. It's being brought in here to tell a story, and that story that it's trying to tell, it's not accurate. We can't rely on it, any of it. So the judge says, all right, well, it's coming in anyways. Thanks for your objection, but here's why I'm letting it in. They go back to Rule 901, Federal Rules of Evidence. And they're going to give us a lot of language here, talking about that all that is required is that a reasonable juror could find in favor of authenticity or identification. You see this? It's a minimal standard. All you need is testimony of a witness with knowledge that a matter is what it is claimed to be. That's it. So here we've got Juan Alessi. He comes out and he says, this is the black book that Epstein used. That's it. Minimal standard. Not all that complicated. Then she goes through and talks about hearsay. Well, what is hearsay? You know, you're objecting here. You're saying that this is a hearsay problem. They go and they define it. They start. Well, first we're going to address this. We're going to, take a look at Rule 901. And we're going to say that, yeah, Juan Alessi, when he came out and testified, that's it. That's sufficient to meet the standard. He said that when he came out in court that he worked at Palm Beach residence from 1990 to 2002. 12 years. It's a long time. His job required him to spend a significant amount of time at the residence. Based on his years working there, he recalled Epstein and Miss Maxwell, they maintained telephone directories. And that Exhibit 52 was a version of those directories. Juan, not John, by the way, first testified about the function of the telephone directories in the Palm Beach residence. He recalled first seeing them in 1995 or 1996. He testified where in the home they were kept. He said, quote, in the kitchen desk. And so this is what the defense was trying to beat him up over this, right? You don't remember, this is a different book than the one that you saw, blah, blah, blah. Juan comes out, not John, testifies Epstein had 3 desks in the house. Miss Maxwell's was on each side of her night table or on Mr. Epstein's night table. Juan said that the directories were updated either once or twice a year. New contacts were added to each new copy. Alessi said that, the judge says that Alessi's testimony is corroborated by Exhibit 606, the household manual. And remember the household manual? We have this in the mind map as well. We saw that it's directly connected to Juan Alessi. So if we go back over to Juan, if we go to our exhibits, we see that Juan is an employee of the Epsteins. He was primarily based out of Palm Beach. Juan Alessi, the household manual is right here. Guess what? As part of the manual, it says that he's got to place a telephone book by their bedside. We talked about how sort of sociopathic and insane this whole thing was. You see it right here. A copy of Mr. Epstein and Miss Maxwell's telephone directories must be placed to the right of each telephone except for the guest rooms. Okay, so what the judge is saying is, yeah, guess what? Juan came and talked about it, and the government picked up an exhibit, and 606 matches Juan's testimony, and so therefore, good enough. Alessi's identifying the manual. He references the JE and GM telephone directories. He says that he calls them, quote, books with hundreds and hundreds of names and telephone numbers, which matches GX 606. That was the other exhibit of the household manual. He also explained the physical appearance of the directories. So he actually described them physically. He explained how the books had a, quote, type of hard binding. He said that they're either blue or black. They're kind of the size of a large telephone. As to the contents, he says that the directories he observed, quote, contained a list of alphabetical order of all the people, friends, families, and businesses with Mr. Epstein and Mr. Maxwell. Jane's contact, and, quote, a page with the massages, the massage therapist for Palm Beach. And that kind of looks like what we just looked at, doesn't it? Almost exactly. That sounds exactly like what we looked at. The actual black book that was here as part of the mind map. It's alphabetical order. Starts with Abby, Joanna, Alejandro, works its way all the way down. We get to M's. We got some Maxwell names. Don't know if we have a massage page in this one. But this is what we're fighting about. Judge continues and says, after examining Government Exhibit 52, Juan testified that the type of black book, quote, it was the same as the directories he just recalled observing over the last 6 of his 10 years there. As for the appearance, he testified that 52 had, quote, exactly the same cover of the directories I saw. Quote, the same binding, exactly the same layout as the books he recalled. While he did note that GX52 was thinner and had, quote, a much smaller font than the books he recalled, he overall said that the format was the same. As for the contents, he said that he had reviewed every page of the exhibit and he recognized many, 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 many names amongst the entries, including some of the entries that were, quote, for massage in Palm Beach. Ugh, not good. So Juan Alessi now is just connecting all the dots. And the defense objected to this thing, and now the judge is just rolling one thing after the other, saying, yeah, and this is connected, and this is connected, and this is connected, and this is connected. And so the judge is just going to take apart the defense here one step at a time. The defense, she says, it first objects. They say Mr. Alessi has no personal knowledge about the creation of this directory, and thus he can't authenticate it. So yes, even though Juan Alessi can recognize a directory because he worked there for so long, he wasn't working there when this directory came out. This directory came out, the one that we're talking about specifically, Juan Alessi, and he's never seen that before today at all. When he worked there, we had a different format. We had a different font. The whole book was different names. Everything's different. So the defense says, yeah, okay, so what if he can identify it? If it looks the same, nobody cares. This directory, he can't authenticate. Judge says, yeah, but Alessi acknowledged that this was different than the others. He said it's not as thick as those other versions. He said his name and his wife's names were in the version that he observed, but I didn't see his name or his wife's name in this new one. Obviously, he wasn't working there anymore, so they pulled his name out of the book. Judge says, but a document admitted under the rules, even when no witness saw the creation of document, it may be admitted at trial. Even if you didn't see it, if it's reliable enough, then we can still get that admitted. She gives us an example. She goes through another court case, and so we'll just kind of jump over that. But she tells us that cases, they in fact have allowed a witness to authenticate documents, even if they were not a recipient of this specific document. So somebody else can authenticate something as being sort of something that's used in the course of an activity, even though they didn't see it actually be created. Okay, a little bit more here. Judge Nathan continues. She says, okay, now I've concluded Juan Alessi, the testimony that he gave, it sufficiently authenticates the Black Book. There's a well-trod path here. Alessi's testimony established intimate familiarity with the distinctive directories used in the Palm Beach residence. He was there many times during the conspiracy, the alleged conspiracy. He testified it was the same type of book with the same binding, the same cover, the same information. This testimony about the appearance, content, substance, all of that stuff, that's sufficient enough to establish the rules. So the defense now, even though that you're saying that this is not authentic, I'm finding that it is authentic. And you're going to still object. You're going to say, well, at least we should talk about the weight of the evidence, not the admissibility. So for example, we should say that, okay, maybe it's technically admissible, but we should consider the weight to be less. For example, the judge is sort of fleshing out the defense argument here, saying Mr. Alessi was cross-examined, saying that he did not have personal knowledge about the creation of this exhibit. He acknowledged that he would not know whether this had been altered in some way. He couldn't explain the addition of the Post-it notes or other pencil markings on the typeface book. Don't know how those got there. But it's well settled that any flaws in the chain of custody only bear on the weight of the evidence, not on the admissibility. In other words, Government Exhibit 52, it's modified. Juan Alessi came in and he testified, yeah, I'm the housekeeper. Yes, there was a household manual. Yes, I had to do this. Yes, I did it for 12 years. I put it by the phone every time, and they kept calling me John anyways. And I never missed a time putting the phone book there. So he says, I can identify it and I can recognize it. But when this document comes in, it's all messed up. It's not the same. It's got Post-it notes on it. It's got pencil writings all over the place. It's thinner. It's a different font. Doesn't have his name on it. It's clearly a different book. It's a different document. The defense is saying, okay, well, that's different. I mean, you can't. It's not a reliable document anymore. He's coming in and talking about a version that he saw. This is not the version that he saw. And so how can he be somebody who is talking about something that he claims to know about? He doesn't know anything about it. He wasn't there when it happened, when it was created. Because it's got those pencil markings and the Post-it notes, it has been tampered with, it has been manipulated, and therefore it should be found to be not reliable. Judge says, no, that's not the case. Any flaws just go to the weight of the evidence. In other words, you can use those flaws to show the jurors and communicate to the jurors that this should not be believed, but it doesn't go to the admissibility. It's going to come in. The jurors can take a look at the pencil markings and the Post-it notes, and they can say, well, it kind of makes this seem like it's weaker evidence, but that's up to them. It doesn't keep it out. It's a little bit of a technical legal issue there, but judge continues. Says the court also overrules the objection on hearsay grounds. The directory does not constitute hearsay. It's not being offered for the truth of the names listed to identify any of the particular individuals. Second Circuit has affirmed this. She gives us another example from a different Second Circuit case, talking about documents being relevant just for identification. There's another line of cases in the Second Circuit, and she carries on. A lot of case law, a lot of analysis. You can see all these different, she's citing cases. Okay, so this is what she's doing to justify my opinion. Similarly, United States versus Learman. We've got Tit Yat Chin, Second Circuit. We've got another one, United States versus Chavez, another one. United States versus Mungia, United States versus Acevedo, right? On and on and on and on. So she starts to wrap up, says, here, ladies and gentlemen, the jury could conclude that based on the testimony of Juan Alessi and the Black Book, Juan Alessi and the Household Manual, that Miss Maxwell regularly used this telephone directory from Juan's testimony and the manual, and there were various versions that were maintained over the years. The directory, the judge says, is thus relevant for the non-hearsay purpose that it tends to show a link between Miss Maxwell and the names and phone numbers listed, as well as how the information was organized. It is not offered to establish that any information contained within the book, such as a listed phone number, is in fact accurate. A limiting instruction to that effect is appropriate. If requested by the defense, the court would also instruct the jury that it may not consider any of the handwritten markings since those were not authenticated. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, why is this being admitted? Why is this evidence being submitted to the jurors? What are they trying to show here? Are the prosecutors trying to show the jurors that every name in there is a co-conspirator and that everybody in that black book is guilty? No, that's not what they're trying to show at all. If they were, that would be an improper form, because just being listed in somebody's phone book doesn't equate to guilt. So we have to ask ourselves, right? That's kind of an obvious one, but why would you not be, or what would you be trying to use the evidence for? Here, the judge says the only purpose that's really appropriate, there's two of them. One, just to show that there were phone numbers listed. Okay, Maxwell used the phone, and there was a phone book that she used, and also how the information was organized. And so the jurors can come to a conclusion, whatever conclusion they want to, based on that. That's what the evidence is being submitted for. So the judge gives us a conclusion, and she asks specifically for that limiting instruction. She says, okay, for the foregoing reasons, the court overrules the defense objections to Government Exhibit 52. Parties are ordered to confer proposed limiting instructions. The further order that these additional exhibits, 52A, 52D, E, F, G, and H, are photocopies of Exhibit 52. Those are also going to be admitted. So we've got Exhibit 52, and then we've got A, D, E, F, G, and H. So we've got 6 different, sort of sub-exhibits, which are photocopies of this black book. We don't know what names are in there. But we do know the judge is going to allow this stuff to come in. And so both parties were supposed to confer. Maureen Comey, the defense, they were to get together, have a conversation about this. And they did. And so they submitted a joint stipulated order saying, here's what we're talking about regarding the black book. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this black book is being offered for a limited purpose. It is not being offered for the truth of the matters asserted therein. You may not consider it for that purpose. Rather, you may consider it only to the extent you believe it is relevant to show a link, if any, between Miss Maxwell and the names and phone numbers listed, how, if at all, the information was organized. All right, so maybe now you can say, it's organized. There's a massage section. Or, there's a blondes section, or there's a Palm Beach have a good time section, or whatever. And presumably a lot of those photographs are going to have the names of the victims and their contact information, because a lot of this same testimony was all about that. Remember when we heard from the boyfriend saying that, yeah, I used to sort of arrange some of this stuff. They'd call me, they'd say, is she available? I'd say, sure. She'd go over there. A lot of this was conducted through the phones. It was conducted through, phone numbers and under this little pseudo massage activity. So that is now going to be submitted to the jurors, and the jurors are going to have to decide what to do with that. If you're a juror and you're sitting there and you're asking yourself, okay, I'm looking at this book and there's all these redactions, do you take a look at that? Does this look like you are an organized trafficker, or does this just look like somebody with a phone book? If there's a massage section, and in that massage section, you've got victim 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there, maybe that's a little bit different, isn't it? Because we just heard from 4 of them saying that they were all abused during massages. And if you had a Rolodex of women to abuse, and it was organized that way, well, the jurors may not like that too much, will they? So they can consider it for this purpose. Well, if you just think there's a link. So the prosecutors are going to be happy about this. Oh, if you just think there's a link between Miss Maxwell and the names and phone numbers, well, that might be a good thing, because if, Jane's name's in there, Kate's name's in there, Carolyn's name's in there, Annie's name's in there, which they are, I'm sure of it. Or in one of these, right? We don't know if it's in the published one, but they've got... All right, so you can see. So prosecutors score a victory on that, but the defense still has their entire case to present, and they're going to do that. In fact, they're supposed to start on Thursday, and the U.S. government is trying to figure out what their defense is going to look like so that they can prepare their prosecution and their rebuttal, their response. So the prosecution now is saying, we need a little bit more information before we can jump into this. Maureen Comey and the prosecutors from the U.S. government sent a letter on Sunday in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. They sent it over to Judge Nathan. And they said, Judge, listen, we need an order from you. We respectfully submit this letter. We're asking the court to direct the defense to provide the government with the witnesses it anticipates calling next week by 10 a.m. tomorrow, December 13th. Footnote 1, why? Oh, we have another problem here. Comey and co., they're also noting that the defense also made an untimely production of materials on Friday evening following the close of the government's case. We're going to try to preclude that later this evening, Judge. We're just notifying you that another motion is forthcoming. It's going to be a doozy. So they're going to try to preclude some other evidence that was disclosed by the defense, or some witness or some type testimony that was disclosed late on Friday. I don't know what it is because it's not on the docket, but we'll figure out what that is, because Comey's going to respond and try to preclude that evidence. All right, so back to this. Comey saying, Judge, the defense is scheduled to start their case, like soon. And we need to know what order they're calling their witnesses in. Comey says that the government previewed for several days prior to the close of the government's case that it would rest sometime last week. Following the close of our case, the government requested the defense provide the government with Rule 26.2 material along with, quote, a list of witnesses and an order of the first witnesses. The court ordered the defense to do so, stating, yes, you'll do that. So they're quoting the judge. Yes, you'll do that. A list of witnesses and an order of the first list. Sounds pretty reasonable. So Comey says, all right, so Friday evening, Judge, the defense sent over a letter to the government. It's attached here as Exhibit A. Letter identifies, and we don't have this letter because this is going to be redacted, I'm sure. The letter identifies, Judge, 35 defense witnesses in alphabetical order. 35 in defense witnesses. Big whopping number there. And Comey says, and they don't even tell us what order they're in. 35 witnesses, and we don't even know what order they're going to call them in. So how are we supposed to prepare for this thing? They're just going to pick a name out of a hat, and we just got to be prepared on every single one of these witnesses? And also, Judge, 35 of them? What are you, nuts? We didn't even have 35 witnesses. Did we? We go back through it. We've got Jane, Matt, Kate, Carolyn, Sean, Annie Farmer is 6, boyfriend 7, 8, mother 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We've got Kimberly, so maybe 24, maybe 25 total witnesses that the U.S. government called, some of them very short, several of them entirely transactional, right? These people, Patrick McHugh, FedEx paralegal, the MVD employee, all entirely transactional. They were up there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe. I mean, probably longer than that, but essentially 10 minutes in the grand scheme of things. Daniel Besselson talked about Interlochen School of Arts, right? All of these people. So the defense, we haven't even started on the defense yet. We can see that we've already identified these people just from the disclosure. This is who they were disclosing before the trial even started. These people. We have Ryan Hall, forensic psychiatry, talked all about him. I made a whole video about, I think I did about these guys. We've got Burnett Gershman. He's going to be disclosed to talk about prosecutorial integrity. Prosecutors are liars and they're all manipulating everything, is what he's going to say. Robert Kelso, computer forensics, is on the list. We don't know what order he's in. He's going to talk about all sorts of stuff about, look at his background. Let's see here. Forensic Pursuit, 25 years of experience in computer forensics. John Lopez, financials and accounting. He's probably going to rebut all of the transactionary individuals from the government side. Gerald Laporte, document analysis. Same thing with Jennifer Nasso. We've got Elizabeth Loftus, false memories. And Park Dietz, forensic psychiatry. And that's just like a short smattering of the defense. So we've got, what is that, 3, 6, 8 different expert witnesses that I've just been able to glean just from the defense disclosure. Not even what they just disclosed. So there was, 8 there? Yeah, so there's a lot more people. And they don't have any victims. This is just witnesses. So we don't know who else is there. And so we can take a look now back at what Comey is talking about. We've got no information about the order. Government conferred with the defense about the witness order yesterday, and they told us that there's going to be even more information that's going to be forthcoming. Dang it. Government has not received anything, though. Accordingly, Judge, the government respectfully requests the court tell the defense to provide the government by 10 a.m. tomorrow with its intended witnesses for Thursday and Friday, and that by Tuesday, December 14th, tomorrow, its full intended witness order. We want to know how they're going to call them. We just saw they got 35 people. We need to know what order they're calling them in. Such an order, says Comey, would be consistent with the government's disclosures. The government provided the defense with its first 5 witnesses on November 24th, 5 days before the start of trial. We told them who we were going to be calling, and they are not telling us who they're going to be calling, and that's not fair, Judge. We gave them a full ordered witness list on November 27th, 2 days before the start of trial. Now, we saw that Exhibit A, the list of all of those 35 people, going to be filed under seal, which is why we can't see it. There are also going to be, from the defense, people who testify with pseudonyms and individuals who are going to want to remain anonymous. Comey also says that the government gave its disclosure materials to on October 11th, more than a month before. And the defense disclosed stuff on Friday. It did not include material for many of the witnesses on her list. So they're going to be trying to do sort of 2 things here, trying to stop these witnesses from coming in. One, because they were disclosed late, just the fact that they were disclosed late, or it's going to be because the substance of their disclosure was not articulated thoroughly enough to justify them being called. So for example, we've talked about several other witnesses and qualified witnesses, pursuant to Daubert hearings and making sure that an expert witness is an actual expert witness, and had a lot of those issues. The prosecution can't do that investigation of the defense experts unless they know about them, right? Just like if you're a defendant and you're going through a criminal case, if the government is charging you with the crime, you have to know what the evidence says. You have to know what the police are saying and claiming happened. Or you have to know what's in the blood results. You have to know if they tested the drugs and what those drugs said. Same concept applies for the prosecution. If the defense here, a multi-million-dollar defense, probably, 10 to 20 million if I had to guesstimate, they're going to have a lot of witnesses, probably more, it sounds like, than the government does. And so they're sort of outmaneuvering the government. They're manhandling the government to some degree with more witnesses. And the government's saying, we don't know what to do with all this. This doesn't happen often, believe me. Bobbi Sternheim now says in response, all right, Judge, I'm now going to inform the court that the defense has provided the government with a tentative order of the first several defense witnesses. I gave it to them. I don't know what they're complaining about. We have informed the government that we are still trying to make travel arrangements for defense witnesses, many of whom are coming from locations out of the district and abroad, and we have not been able to reach counsel for some of the witnesses over the weekend. We further informed the government that the order of witnesses is subject to change, and we will advise the government if we think the order will change as travel plans solidify. Remember, the government said that they were going to go well into January. This was supposed to be a 6-week trial. Nobody had any idea that they were going to be resting after 8 days of actual trial with very limited evidence being presented. Kind of a shocker. So now that they rested so early, now we're modifying our travel plans, and we're going to let you know when we get things in order. Bobbi continues, says, we also informed the government that 3 of the defense witnesses have requested to testify under their first names or under a pseudonym. The government opposes this request. Oh, well, isn't that interesting? Because a lot of the government witnesses testified under their first names or pseudonyms, but now they're opposing when the defense doesn't. Isn't that convenient? Bobbi says the court's ruling on this issue may impact the willingness of those witnesses to testify. And if they don't testify, guess what? Miss Maxwell's right to present her defense is compromised, and it also may affect the witness order. So if you're not going to play fair, if you're going to let their witnesses testify under a pseudonym or under their first names, and you're not going to let us do that, well, guess what? It might manipulate everything. It might change everything, because those witnesses may decide that they don't want to testify. And if they don't want to testify, well, then we have to change everything up, don't we? And if we have to change everything up, don't we? Then that's going to mean everything's out of order, Judge. And so this may continue on indefinitely, especially since you all are being so difficult and you're not allowing our witnesses to testify the way we want them to. So you can see how this goes. And Bobbi Sternheim does this little judo maneuver. Every time somebody files something, she just flips it around into, well, you're violating my client's rights. It's pretty amazing. You know, I got to be honest, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to watch her work. And so that is the docket update in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And there's going to be a lot more, I'm sure of it, because we've already heard that the U.S. government prosecutors are going to be filing a motion to preclude a number of these 35 witnesses. They're going to say late disclosures, the substance of the disclosures were not proper, the timing was off, and on and on and on. And the defense is going to respond, no, following the rules, this is how it works. And we're going to listen to what the judge has to say. And we've got a couple days because trial starts back up on Thursday, and I hope you join us for that. We have one final segment on the show today. We're talking about Ian Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's brother, kind of has some interesting thoughts on the whole did Epstein kill himself thing. And of course, I want to make sure that you vote in on this. There is a pinned poll up there on YouTube. If you're watching the show live, let's check in on the poll. We'll see if this changes between now and the final outcome on this segment here. So we have the question that is being asked: did Epstein kill himself? Was he killed? Is he still alive? Or I don't know. And as it stands, we have 61% that are chiming in. Epstein was killed. Oh my goodness. Out of 137 responses, 84 votes, 60% saying he was killed. We got 23% saying he's still alive, up to 24%. We have a good 5% not real sure about it. And 10% are saying that he, in fact, killed himself. So 10% saying the story sounds about right. Full 62% say he was killed. And we've got a 25% say that he's actually still alive. They just wheeled him out of there. Maybe it was sort of a Mossad operation or something to that effect. Now, what's very interesting about this, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell knew Jeffrey Epstein very well. They were engaged in a lot of activities together for a long period of time. Stuff that's, really, really, out there. So these people were close. They did everything together. We heard from a lot of different individuals that they were basically inseparable. So if anybody knows Epstein and whether he's going to kill himself, probably Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And Ian Maxwell, Ghislaine's brother, was giving an interview, and he had some pretty interesting thoughts on this whole thing. And so we're going to ask him specifically, do you think Epstein killed himself? Does Ghislaine think Epstein killed himself? And if Epstein didn't kill himself and somebody else killed him, and he's not still alive, who do you think did it, Ian? Was it the Mossad? We've got a lot to get into. But before we do, let's start with, why are people interested in the Ghislaine Maxwell case anyways? Is it because people are bored? It's COVID? That's it? Well, that's what he says. Here it is.
Finger on what it is?
Well, I think it also, of course, has a royal ingredient just to complete that pack of cards, if you want. And, we're coming through we're still in the midst of this COVID situation, and it's just something else to keep people interested.
Oh, yeah, people are just bored.
I mean, I think the money really isn't the base of it, because we now know that something like $125 million has been paid to something like 120 girls or accusers by the Jeffrey Epstein estate. On that basis, it is likely that their legal teams will have collected something like $60 million.
Whoa!
On the basis of no win, no fee type percentages. So I think there's been a real interest to drive this by the lawyers. It was given
Yeah, so you see what he's saying. He's basically blaming it on COVID. Oh, it's not royal. Has a little hint of royalty, Prince Andrew and all that stuff. It's just the standard intrigue. People are just interested in the fact because it's COVID. They've run out of stuff on Netflix. They're tired of Hulu, HBO. Secession just ended last night. What else are they going to do? And so they just tune into channels like this one because I guess we're just like covering tabloid news. It's just like this is like Us Weekly or something where we're talking about the Kardashians. Congratulations on passing the bar exam. Well done. So she's going to or he's going to just sort of poo-poo this whole thing. Not even a big deal. Has nothing to do with the fact that it involved the global elite, that this happened for decades, that these are all of the people that are sort of, self-appointed overlords of society, the billionaires, the 100 millionaires, the people who own islands, who rule countries, who operate the biggest businesses in the world, who are part of the operational structure of the globe, involved in international trafficking of children. Could it be that? And we're all sick of it. We're all disgusted by it. We want to make sure that there's justice done. Yeah, that's my interest in it. I mean, that's why I'm so interested in it. But he's going to say it's COVID and everybody's bored. Okay, so of course he has to say that because he doesn't want to reveal the truth, that this is, evil on a level that we've never seen before, really. And that's why people are interested in it. Okay, so he continues on. His point, though, was interesting about those lawyers, specifically talking about 120 girls were paid $125 million. We've heard from several of the victims in this case that many of them were paid multi-million dollars. I think that Jane got like, $5 million after taxes, 2.9. Uncle Sam has to take their cut, of course. So that was the situation. Lawyers are going to be taking a big portion of that, right? Uncle Sam takes their cut, portion of that $5 million, that goes to the lawyers. What are you, nuts? Lawyers got to get paid, baby. We got to eat. I don't practice that type of law, by the way. So all these contingency fees, right? If a lawyer wins, they get paid. And so now you've got all of these frothy lawyers foaming at the mouth, salivating over $1 million payouts from the Epstein Compensation Fund. You get a nice woman who comes in, says, yeah, no, I mean, I went to his island one time. Did he look at you? He did, actually. Were you raped? Probably. All right, great. I see $5 million price tag attached to your story. Let's go file a claim. Lawyers are going to take, 40% of that when it settles. That's a lot of money. Out of $125 million paid out by the Victim Compensation Fund, a whopping 40% of that for law firms, yeah, that's going to motivate a lot of lawyers to do it. So he's blaming the lawyers. What else is new? We can take it. He carries on, though, and he's talking about the U.S. government, and specifically this woman who kind of went out and gave this ranting press conference. He's very upset about her when this whole thing started. U.S. versus Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, she was, prosecuted back in 2020. Here he is.
Enormous kick by the U.S. government when it ran through its attorney in the Southern District of New York a quite egregious press conference on the day my sister was arrested, pointing to pictures of her with Jeffrey Epstein and saying, in terms, she is guilty. She is guilty of these crimes. She's a monster. She's slithered away to some fancy abode in New Hampshire and so on. It was really shocking. And everybody piles in then behind it. And then you have these enormously powerful films that were run by Netflix, amongst others.
Netflix.
To keep this whole game going. And of course, the accusers and their lawyers take front stage, come at the front of these pictures, and that's still going on, in my view, completely wrongly, where there are perhaps 3, 4, 5, half a dozen non-testifying accusers of my sister on the networks this week with their allegations and their uncorroborated statements, which are deeply, deeply prejudicial. And it's completely wrong that this can be allowed to be going on in the midst of a trial. It wouldn't happen in England.
Yeah, it says it wouldn't happen in England. It's like, hey, man, that happens all over the place here. We have people all over the media dunking on people being charged with crimes all across this country. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse didn't get any favors in the media. Derek Chauvin got no favors in the media. Now, he's talking specifically about, women out there who are not a part of the criminal charges, making allegations of criminality on a regular basis. And so if you're going to be sitting there sort of defending, somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse or Derek Chauvin against the presumptions being imputed to them in the media, you kind of got to do the same thing with Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And I've gotten a lot of crap for that from a lot of people when I say, look, it's still the presumption of innocence. No matter what Ghislaine did or what Jeffrey Epstein did, like, these people still deserve the presumption of innocence, because if you cross that line with them and you say it's okay to do it for them, it just, the line just keeps moving. And then it ends up that your son, who is being accused of some heinous crime, has no more lines, no boundaries to protect him or her. And so you got to be very careful when you sort of just say, well, we're just going to lock him up and throw away the key without any due process or the presumption of innocence. And part of that, of course, is in the court of public opinion. That's why these courts are, doing what they can to protect these trials from outside influence. And we haven't heard much of that here, right? But this is as, if not more high profile than a lot of the other cases that we've covered. This case has been percolating for 2 decades, at least. So it does require, to support Ian's point, it does require, right, some consideration of how this is being talked about in the court of public opinion. Even for Ghislaine Maxwell. I know, it makes me sick to even say it, but it's true. All right, so we have another clip from him. Now, this is where we get into some of the juicy and the good stuff. We've got this is Ian Maxwell, Ghislaine's brother, who is going to be talking about the conspiracy theory. All right, now, so Jeffrey Epstein, he was in prison. The question is, did he kill himself? What do you think? Is this a conspiracy, or is this just a screw up? And he's going to use a very English word, which when I first heard it, it sort of made my eyebrows go, what? What is that? Oh, I guess I think I know what that, I thought it was an offensive word, kind of. I don't know. You'll have to tell me. I think we have some more people listening in from the UK lately since we've been talking about Ghislaine, but let me know. Is this a common phrase over there? Here's what he says.
Between conspiracy theories and cock-up theories. I'm a cock-up man, and I
Whoa.
always have been. I think conspiracies are really difficult to mount. I think they are complex ideas. What is a conspiracy? It's a meeting of minds. That's the fundamental idea behind a conspiracy, certainly in the law. And it's therefore, you've got to imagine how these things can possibly happen. People have to sit around and talk and agree and plan and so on. That's not my experience of life. So I don't buy a lot of the conspiracy theories at all. It so happens that one of the conspiracy theories is about my father, that he was murdered rather than committed suicide or had an accident. Of all of my siblings, Ghislaine is the only one who happens to believe that he was murdered.
He was murdered.
And I would venture to believe that she may also think that Epstein was murdered.
Ooh! I may also venture to believe that she also believes that Epstein was murdered. And yeah, there's some people in the shout out from the UK over there. Marilyn Hughes says, yeah, it means messed up. Yeah, all right. So a lot of people chiming in from the UK. Thank you for the understanding. All right. And so, but you heard what he said. Uh-oh. I'd venture to say that I think Ghislaine Maxwell thinks that Epstein was murdered. And Ghislaine Maxwell knew him pretty well. they did a lot of stuff together, a lot of pretty bad stuff together. And so, you have to imagine that they had a pretty close bond. And she never thought that he was suicidal. She thinks that maybe he was killed. If he was killed, or who did this? Or what was she a part of? Was she a part of some international cabal? Is there a satanic ring of people who are trafficking and, underage individuals? What's going on out there in the world? Was it the Mossad, as a lot of people have speculated? Not according to Ian. Get that out of your skulls.
So those are conspiracy theories that have got some, you might be able to stand them up to an extent, but it's so long ago in the case of my father now that probably any such evidence has gone out of the door, and we don't know about Epstein. As for involvement with, say, the Mossad in the case of Ghislaine and or Epstein himself, I don't buy that. I haven't seen any evidence for it.
No evidence.
Nothing has been advanced. But we live in a world where conspiracy is currency. And you can see that social media is fueled with endless conspiracies and deep fake imagery and deep fake text and so on. And you've just got to be adept at deciding what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. So I happen to think that most of it is cobblers. And,
Cobblers.
That's what I think.
What do you think?
Okay, so learning a lot of new language here today, but everybody's just cobblers also as well. Definitely not the Mossad. Never seen any evidence of that. Jeffrey Epstein's just this sort of weird shadow figure that inherited, or stole hundreds of millions of dollars, kind of turned that into more money, and then apparently was the centerpiece of a global ring of something or other. I don't know if that's the Mossad or if that's any intelligence agency or if it's just a big evil layer of individuals, but Ian Maxwell says definitely not the Mossad, and who can argue with that? So we have one final comment from him. Was he killed? Epstein. Was he killed, or did he kill himself? And if he didn't kill himself and he was killed, who did it? You mind answering that for us here, Maxwell? This is over from the Spectator podcast.
Was killed by somebody. Who do you think it would have been? Or who was behind it?
No, I'm perfectly happy to answer that. I do happen to think my sister does think that he was killed. I'm content myself to rely on a suicide, but it doesn't really matter. The man's dead. Your second question,
it does matter.
Who would have killed him? It's an open matter. One of the whole set of conspiracy theories and allegations about this whole case is that there are other men who have been involved and were also basically involved in criminal activities with underage girls.
Yes.
Although that's never been proved. There's a famous case coming up between Alan Dershowitz, the well-known American lawyer, and Virginia Giuffre, who is also the accuser of my sister and of Prince Andrew. So we're going to see that's going to be tested in the coming months next year. I don't know who would have knocked Jeffrey Epstein off.
I don't know who would have knocked Jeffrey Epstein off. It's a good question. A lot of potential answers to that question there, but it doesn't really matter one way or the other. It's kind of like Hillary Clinton. At this point, what difference does it make how Benghazi happened? Remember that whole clip? It doesn't matter how Epstein was killed. If it was a foreign government intelligence agency that did it, well, whatever. If he killed himself, whatever. It's not a big deal. If somebody else snuck into a federal prison, a secured prison, guards were asleep, cameras were turned off, the whole thing, went down, and he got murdered, taken out by somebody. Not a big deal. Doesn't matter. He's dead. What's done is done. Can we just let bygones be bygones? So he doesn't have any idea who did it, but he's not the Mossad. And Ghislaine Maxwell, as we know, doesn't think he was murdered. Probably the only person on this planet who knows Epstein better than anybody. Doesn't think he was murdered. I'm sorry. Thinks he was murdered. Doesn't think he committed suicide because she knows him well. He wouldn't do such a thing. All right. So this case just gets weirder and weirder. Let's see what you have to say about this over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we had a couple nice donations come in via Super Chat. So I want to give some thank yous to Marzi Panna over there with a donation on YouTube. Thank you for that, Marzi. I threw that back up there. We got DRC Garage says, what are the chances of the Clintons going down for their involvement? Probably zero. I don't think any. You saw what the government came out with. They got 8 days. 8 days of trial. with like 26 witnesses or whatever we just counted up here. So, it's kind of like a joke. One of the biggest, most comprehensive, global, interconnected trafficking case. The mind map that we've created here. I could run a trial for 6 months on this mind map. they got it for 8 days. All right. So, no, I don't think anybody's going down. This whole thing is just being orchestrated perfectly. Right. Ghislaine will probably get convicted. There'll be a bunch of fanfare about it. Oh, she got convicted. Finally, this whole saga can come to a close. She's going to get, sentenced, probably, kind of a moderate sentence. She'll go up on appeals. She'll be exonerated on appeal. She should have been included in that non-prosecution agreement. She shouldn't really ever be prosecuted anyways because of some corrupt government bureaucrat prosecutor authorized the 2007 non-prosecution agreement in the first place. And so this whole thing is just it's kind of just a big show. And as we know, the defense is going to come out with more witnesses than the government even presented. So it's just laughable as hell. No, I don't think anything's going to happen from the Clintons. Marzi Panna with another donation. Thank you, Marzi. That's 2 from you today. Very generous. And then Tracy Griffin, of course, with another nice donation. Thank you for that, Tracy. All right. And so we're going to check back in over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Before we do, okay, let's do an update here. We've got 264 responses in here. 62% saying Epstein was killed. We're up to 25% say he's still alive. Only 8% say that he actually did kill himself. If you haven't voted yet, it is pinned up on the YouTube chat. But yeah, he was killed, 62%. So the majority of people finding that Epstein killed himself. All right, let's see what we've got for the questions here. Looks like we got a little bit of a full docket. Yes, we've got Chip Von Shoulder is here. Says, funny how I mentioned the book about reading in Charlottesville and then our Zoom meeting got corrupted. Let me tell you about this with a larger audience. The book about Charlottesville explains in detail what led up to the historical event. Book is titled Charlottesville Untold, Inside Unite the Right. It's by Ann Wilson Smith, $5 ebook for anyone who is interested in knowing the facts about Charlottesville. Highly recommended. That higher power sure works fast, Rob. Thanks, Rob. That's from Chip Von Shoulder. Yeah, and Chip Von Shoulder was there at our monthly meetup on Saturday, and it was a good time. He was talking about sort of, his sort of takeaways from being a part of the community, and I appreciated that, Chip. We have Monster One says, did you watch any of the Kim Potter trial? They basically spent the whole day establishing that Kim shot right, which is obvious, just another day of wasted testimony. Seems like they're trying to convict based on the length of the trial and not the actual event. They want the jury saying they had all the testimony that she must be guilty. Hopefully the jury doesn't fall for their tricks. No, I have not watched any of the Kim Potter trial, unfortunately. I'm just sort of focused on Ghislaine at the moment. We have another one. It says, Rob, I hope you're doing well. Just want to let you know that the circle in Epstein's photo is a helicopter landing place. Usual where we live in Uruguay as well. Best wishes. Oh, so it's not a human sacrifice location for the blood of virgins. That's good. Thank you for clarifying. Good to see you, Miss Danny. We have Monster One says, you ever watch Luke Rudkowski from We Are Change? He snuck onto Epstein Island. We Are Change on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. No, I have not. I don't think I've seen that. He snuck onto the island? I don't see it. Yeah, why not? It's pretty close to a lot of the other islands. I guess you could just get a boat and go over there. Kincaid says, evening, good sir. Question. Since the legal system decides what is considered fact or not, how do professionals rationalize the curation? Nothing is absolute, but leaving out key evidence seems typical. Is there an independent, quote, agency that can genuinely challenge the absurdity of it all? Lastly, I'm impressed with Hillary and Bill having enough energy to finish unpacking on the island and still make time for the media events. Faking emotions is rough on Demon Spawn. That's from Kincaid. Well, no, I mean, that's sort of the whole part of lawyering. Lawyers have different interpretations of reality, and we fight about that. That's why you have lawyers who go do those things. There's not going to be an agency, for most, like there are certain things that lawyers will agree upon, certain stipulations, and, that we'll go to different formulas and things that we use to analyze complex issues. But generally speaking, no, I mean, that's why you hire lawyers, right? It's to fight over the interpretation of reality, really. Here, Ghislaine's lawyers are saying all of these women testifying are liars. Money, memory, and manipulation. They don't remember anything. They've all been manipulated by the government to come out and go against Ghislaine Maxwell because they didn't get Epstein. And money. They've all been paid off on all of this. They're all doing this for money. They have improper, impure motives for any of this. And so the prosecution is going to say the opposite of that. No, it's not. None of that's true. That's a perversion of reality. The reality here is these are victims of horrendous crimes. They have been abused in unimaginable ways, and they deserve justice here. And that is the form of having the abusers being punished indefinitely with, 35 years in prison, whatever they ask for. So that's why you have lawyers. There's not going to be an agency that goes out there and just sort of details what some of these concerns are. Guest number 8 is here, says, quit trying to expose me, Rob. Let's see if they're over on the mind map. Who's there? Who's this person? Oh, guest number 9 is here, busted. So if you are a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, then you can get access to all this mind map and navigate it at your leisure. We also have, that was from guest number 8. Let's see who else we have. Guest number 9, we just outed. Thunder 7 says, I remember Bill Richardson, the former governor of New Mexico. He was named by Virginia Jeffrey, as one of the men she was pimped out to by Maxwell. He must have helped Epstein buy the Zorro Ranch. Maybe Gates can buy it, as he's buying up millions of acres of farmland. He invited the Clintons to stay at their old guest house. The rest of the game can have a reunion. Yuck, the ghosts that must haunt that ranch of all the miners and everybody abused there would be disgusting. Wouldn't even want to step foot in that place or any of their homes. Yeah. 27 million for all of that bad energy and bad karma and awfulness. No. Kincaid says, a watering hole. I didn't hear Epstein was a furry either. Must have left out those outfits, robes, hide much. Okay. Thunder 7 says, the Black Book is irrelevant. I agree with the defense. Anyone's name can be in there. Doesn't prove anything. Not all people they associated with were perverts. And not every name in the book means that they had contact with them. It's the photos, the videotapes that tell the real horror. And I can't believe the pilots and the staff haven't been charged with accessory to trafficking and other crimes. I'm talking about the ranch and island too. Yeah, it's a great question, Thunder 7. I mean, there are tentacles of this thing that go everywhere, and they're just they just want Ghislaine. She's the person, that's it. Everything else, forget about it. Doesn't matter, not important. Only Ghislaine. And as soon as Ghislaine's convicted, we're just going to put a nice little bow on that, wrap it up, give that present to the American people. Look, we convicted a monster. Everybody's going to go, yeah, great. And guess what? Never going to get to the bottom of it. The people who are really responsible for it, never going to be uncovered. And we're just going to continue to watch this disgusting perversion happen throughout our society. Monster 1 says, I figured it out. Helena Hutchins was an alias for Epstein victim and witness protection. Epstein called Baldwin from his hideout, told him to take care of it. Baldwin took care of it. It all comes full circle. Alec Baldwin got activated for Jeffrey Epstein, who is still alive because Ghislaine Maxwell says that he wouldn't kill himself. Monster 1 says the government will redact every name except Donald Trump's, which is true. They've been doing everything they can to smear him. Kincaid says, I find it interesting how evil masterminds are always so methodical about paperwork. All those phone books and no mention of menus or room service. There was a joke about Alec, but not shooting blanks. But thank you for all the new channel features and content. Well, you're welcome there, Kincaid. Thanks for being a part of the program and being a part of the show. A couple more. Monster 1 says, if I was the defense, I would say the witnesses are in order. Alphabetical order. Dummies, here. Do you want it in reverse alphabetical? Because I can just press that sort button and flip it right around for you here, Maureen. Would you like that? I'll send it over here in immediate. All right, we've got another one. Monster 1 says the trial is going to be 6 weeks of the defense, which could be. Sergeant Bob says, did Epstein get killed? He was connected to Slick Willie Clinton, as many other deceased people were. Enough said. That's true. Clintons sort of have a wake everywhere they go. Kincaid says, the brother said royal ingredient. What a banana. Taking out the sting. Nah, bruh. That's from Kincaid. We have Outnumbered Mom says, if she rules the defense witnesses can testify under fake names, I hope the state outs every single one of them like the defense did to their victims. What's good for the goose? It's a good point there, Outnumbered Mom. You're right about that because the defense did that. Remember Jeff Paliuka, the G is silent like lasagna? I think twice, he got admonished by the judge one time, and then later on, he just said it. Nobody said anything. And the reporters, inner city press, and I think it was Adam Classfield, they said, nobody even noticed it. The judge didn't notice it. The prosecution didn't notice it, and he did it again. So yeah, if it slips when the government does it, can't be too upset about that. We have Chris Wolney's here, says, hey, Rob, Speaking of money, it would be interesting to see the details about who paid that bloke to do that interview and imply the victims are all about the money. Recompense for damages to crime victims are paid in money. That's how the system works. I'm sure there are also financial incentives behind his outlook on the matter. Yeah, yep. You're exactly right about that, Chris. What do you expect? How is he going to compensate these victims who were abused by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for, I don't know, several years? Money. You can't, it's not like what's good for the goose. It is, but it's sort of what you can't allow these victims to go and get any other type of recompense. It has to be money. That's from Chris Wolney. Good to see you, Chris. Sergeant Bob says, research shows people hearing a British accent rate the speaker as more intelligent than they would otherwise. Interesting bit of rubbish fact. That's from Sergeant Bob. C. Rose says, give me that sweet contingency fee confirmed in writing for the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund. And the tabloids can point fingers at me and other lawyers all they want. I'd be so far gone, not even the Clintons could find me. Yeah, it's good money. Yeah, 40% of $5 million bucks. It's good money. Jack Elias says, who would knock off Epstein? How many intelligence agencies are there on the planet? There is your suspect list. You can start right there. Everybody would want him dead. Yeah, so just start at the top. Vientikis Prime is here. Says, wait, am I getting this right? Is Ian saying that he doesn't think a lot of conspiracies are real because he doesn't spend a lot of time on them, or did I hear him wrong? Realistically, all many rich people really do is sit around and conspire. Then they pay people off. They do a lot of it behind closed doors and are out of public view. You have things like Bilderberg and whatnot. It's literally the definition of what conspiracy is, regardless of the connotation. However, most people are typically ready to advantage themselves at the expense of others. So why should they be any different? For people who don't think there's anything going on against the public interest by the ultra-wealthy, let me just point out that such an idea goes against basic human psychology. Also, let's just take a moment to acknowledge that they make all these nefarious machinations explicit. Just saying. Yeah, it's a good point. You don't have to speculate too much about it. I mean, they're sort of telling you what they want to do everywhere you look. I'm glad that you're here. We have Vientikis says Rudkowski's video. So I'll take a look at that. I'll bookmark that one, Vientikis. Thank you. Monster One says, speaking of not living in reality, did you see the Binger interview? Complete BS the whole way through. You should check it out for tomorrow's show. I didn't. I saw that Nick Rekieta actually, I think he did a real-time reaction. Maybe I'll watch that one. I can't listen. I've listened to Thomas Binger enough. I can't do it anymore. I've had enough of him. You want to listen to what he... maybe I'll read it. John Halgren is here, not one. Says, do you feel 35 witnesses are excessive after the government trotted out 25? Just curious. Also, it was the Russians who got Epstein. They did it over a Zoom meeting. Yeah, John, I know. We got hacked by the Russians this weekend. rough one. But we made it, because we're resilient as hell over here. 35 witnesses, yeah, excessive over the government's 25. Yeah, definitely. But that's how this works. It's like a scale. You have to present evidence. If you don't present any evidence, then you're just sitting there saying, what they said is not true. And that's not a good defense, right? Some people will just say, we don't need any expert witnesses. We don't need any defense experts or anything like that. Well, if their expert says that you did something wrong and you don't have an expert to say, no, I didn't, who is at an advantage there? So here, what the defense is doing is saying, that's great, 25 witnesses, wow. Okay, we're going to bring 35. If they would have brought 35 witnesses out, they'd have said, that's a lot of witnesses. Okay, we're going to bring 45. And if they would have said, we're going to bring 55, 65 witnesses for the defense, more or less, because it's going to be outweighing the other side. It's really as simple as that. And I think it's something powerful if you can afford it and you can have a legal team that's going to be able to do that. Again, Ghislaine's case is, I think roughly the numbers that she has set aside, that the courts have allowed her to set aside, is something like $6.8 million for her defense. Okay, and that's probably just the tip of it, right? Her family has millions of dollars. She comes from, basically royalty. They've got money stashed away all over the place. So the court said you can use 6.8 of your money to do this, but they're probably spending another 10 just from family money. Vientikis says, Viva's here. Shout out to Viva. Viva's here. He submitted a super chat over there. Shout out to Viva. A wild Canadian has appeared in the chat. Viva is a wild Canadian. It's true. I know Viva a little bit. Wild man out there. He says, you're doing amazing work, Rob. Godspeed and keep it up. Also, eternal truth, #1. Love it. Thank you for that, Viva. Thanks for swinging by and saying hello. Everybody, Viva has an amazing channel. He's been a great friend and somebody who's been, somebody I can talk to when I'm looking for some thoughts and advice and some help. And so go support him and his channel. He's also our neighbor at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. He's right next door at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. So go say hello to Viva and, of course, support them. We got a really sort of great group of people here, and Viva is, right at the center of it. So thank you, Viva, for swinging by. Shout out to Viva, our wild Canadian. All right. And I think we've got a couple of other questions here before we wrap it up. News Now says, I'm still not sure on that non-prosecution agreement. She wasn't a party to it. Her rights aren't violated by it. Epstein, probably. If she testified under that, I would say otherwise. Cosby was very different because he testified with his agreement. He gave up his own Fifth Amendment. Then they used his statements against him. That's true, right? That is true. So Cosby sort of had a little bit, you would call that prejudice, right? As a result of that agreement. He gave something, or you could call it consideration, right? He gave something in exchange for that. Ghislaine Maxwell didn't really give anything for that, right? But did Sarah Kellen, did any of the other people as part of the non-prosecution agreement? So in other words, here's where I have a little bit of a question about that. News Now. Maybe your thoughts will flesh this out for me a little bit. But as part of this non-prosecution agreement, remember that we had these 4 women who were all essentially co-conspirators, like literally. Like, we know that Sarah Kellen was involved in setting up massages. Same thing with Nadia. And they're named here as co-conspirators in this document. If Ghislaine Maxwell was doing those same things, why did they exclude her? Was it known that she was excluded? And if so, wouldn't that be written in this document? Because they didn't write that. In fact, they said, it will not institute any criminal charges against even any potential co-conspirators of Epstein. So how does that not include Ghislaine? Now, I agree with you that this document is insane. Like that the government would create this document is lunacy. They're going to give Epstein a blanket, all of Epstein's co-conspirators a blanket liability against any criminal charges. That's nuts. But this is the government, and they put it forward. And I would consider Ghislaine Maxwell to be a potential co-conspirator. In fact, she's being charged with a crime for what? Conspiracy. I mean, it's right here. She's actually being charged with that. Conspiracy to traffic. Okay, so she is a potential co-conspirator. And so if the idea is that you can't prosecute these gals, Nadia, Leslie Groff, who was, his actual assistant for a long period of time, his executive assistant for 20 years. So if she is protected by that, did she give anything up in exchange for that protection? Because Ghislaine Maxwell could make the same argument. She didn't give up anything. So why wouldn't she be included in that? It's interesting. I don't know. Obviously, I don't do much appellate work. We do appellate work here. I don't personally do it, but we'll see where that one goes. We have a couple other questions here. C-Row says, maybe I'll practice criminal defense and make that $20 million Ghislaine Maxwell money. Criminal defense is the way to go. Well, look, I'm not getting $20 million for representing anybody. This is criminal defense is not, if you want to make a ton of money, criminal defense is not generally the area you want to go because, our practice, we're not representing Ghislaine Maxwell. We're representing a school teacher who, got into a fight with his significant other, something like that. So we charge competitive rates. It is expensive. Hiring a lawyer is expensive, but, we're not making $20 million, cases. Now, there are lawyers who can sort of work their way up and sort of demand that, but that takes you like, Bobbi Sternheim. How old is she? She's probably 60, 70 years old. So she can charge $3,000 an hour because she's been doing it for 40 years. Whereas, a first year criminal defense attorney, you're not coming out making 6 figures right out of the gates. So you have to sort of work your way up into that. It's a very rewarding field. We work with people. You get to help people. You get to work with a lot of good people. Yes, they've been charged with crimes, but everybody makes mistakes. We've all been there. We've all probably engaged in criminal conduct. Whether we've been charged with a crime is a different story. But most of us, myself included, have engaged in criminal conduct at one time or another, just haven't been caught. So some people get caught and it's a mistake and they just, they make up for it. And so it's a very rewarding practice. It's a lot of fun. I mean, we get, interesting stories and we get to deal with people all the time and it's very rewarding. But, unless you've been doing it for 40, 50, 60 years, you don't get to go in and demand, $20 million legal fees. Nor do these cases pop up, where somebody has $20 million or they're going to do, if you want to, make a lot of money in law, the people law is probably not the best place to be. Family law, people-based, right? Trust and estates, often people-based, but a lot more transactional. You've got criminal law, same thing. It's very people-based versus, like drafting contracts or, okay, enough of this topic. So, all right, great question. We have somebody with no name says, your Zoom meeting was good while it lasted on Saturday, my first one. Also good to hear from folks I've only heard in a pseudonym or seen in the comments. Yeah, we had to wrap it up early, but for the time that we did hang out, it was a lot of fun. Sergeant Bob says, Miss Lucky is a more wild Canadian. Sergeant Bob, Miss Lucky, what are you two getting into over there? Sergeant Bob says Miss Lucky is a wild Canadian. Live on YouTube. My goodness. You too. And you're in Arizona now. So you two behave yourselves out there in Chino Valley. Oh, I'm so glad that you're here and you tolerate me. All right, we have another one from Monster One says, you just got to use my cousin Vinny defense. Stand up, point at the prosecution and say everything that guy said is BS. It's a good one. Probably wouldn't be that effective in court, but would be a lot of fun. Vienticus says, all right, just a little bit more on the whole conspiracy aspect. Sometimes the best place to hide something is right in front of people's faces. About 20 years ago, I met this guy who was dealing the funny plant. His mother asked, I see you got a new car and a new stereo and all this stuff. Where'd you get that money? He responded, Mom, I sell drugs. She waved him off and said, oh, stop. I used to do that, but I didn't actually go and do the selling of the drugs. My mom would say, what are you guys doing tonight? Dealing drugs, smoking crack, doing weed, illegal things. What do you think we're doing? We're in middle school. We're going out on our bikes tonight. What do you think we're doing? We're going to be vandalizing things and breaking the law, at least until 2 a.m. So sorry. My poor mother, she had 3 boys, and she's an angel. Okay, a couple more questions before we get up. News Now says, if they have the evidence against the others beyond a reasonable doubt, I would expect charges against the co-conspirators. News Now, I'm not sure I agree with that, but we'll see. Monster One says this is a different case than what they had the non-prosecution agreement for. Once Epstein committed new crimes, that deal went bye-bye. That's how he got arrested. Unless the agreement was included crimes that didn't happen yet, and I doubt that. Well, that plea agreement was from 2007, and aren't all these crimes charged before 2007? I mean, he got raided in 2019, but do any of the victims go outside of the 2007 window? I should know that off the top of my head, but I do not. But it's a good question, right? I think that my read was the 2007 non-prosecution agreement was after all of these other allegations. Remember, we're talking about the 90s with many of these. Palm Beach and all of that. Now, a lot of the stuff came out after the fact, after the New York raid, which I think was in 2019, but still, the victims that are testifying here and now today were back from before 2007. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure. Chris Wolney says, Rob, I forgot to mention my name in the last comment. I was on the Zoom and forgot my ugly sweater. What did I do with my ugly sweater? Did I put it back already? I might have put it back already. Dang it. All right. So that was it from Chris Wolney and our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we have one more super chat that came in over from Jason Jones. It says, what do you think about Julian Assange? So I'm not sure in what context, but I think what's happened to him has been horrendous. I think that people who are whistleblowers and who speak truth to power and who reveal the horrendous activities of the bureaucrats who think that they're, infallible are heroes. But people like Assange and Snowden, those people who really show us what's happening behind the scenes, are heroes. And I think that they should be afforded due process, and they should be afforded the presumption of innocence, and they should be treated with humanity and dignity and respect, and he is not, and it's offensive as hell to me. And so I'm very curious to see what happens when he does get extradited back to the U.S., and we'll continue to cover that case as well. So we're going to dig into Julian Assange and a lot more. I hope that you are a part of that when we continue to do so. Before we get out of here, I want to welcome some new people over to our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Shout outs to Cookie Monster 2 is now in the house. Welcome, Cookie Monster. We have AJ Darsha is here. We have Molly Pop Inc. signed up. We've got Guitar Terry in the house. Randy J98. We got Westworld is here. Equestrian Girl, Richie DC, Red Jersey, Nikki Dragon is here. Things and Stuff. We've got Donna 107. The Vez is now a part of our group. Jimmy W is here. Big Pete Other Bites. We've got Kimmy Cat 03, Kevin AZ, Antar 24, Queen of Tennessee, Reb E. Lee is here. We've got Music Box Lady, Big Ree, Phantasmagloria, Black Cat Meow, Nick McLeod, Dr. Brenton, T. Blakemore, Patriot Minute, J. Markey, Cantonese, Brodyson 96, Squirrel Ono 50, and P. Palin. If you want to join our community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, $5 a month, $50 annually. A lot of good stuff over there. I've got a free PDF copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning. All the mind maps are over there. We put the slides there on a daily basis. We have monthly meetups. We do live streams with exclusive content a couple times during the week when I can squeeze them in. And there's a lot of great people over there. And so we appreciate your support. Check us out at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. I want to thank you for being here and being a part of the show. And I want to make sure that you're back here to do it again tomorrow. We're going to do it all again. 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Central and Texas time, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye. Oh, one final thing. Shout out. Forgot to mention to all of our friends in Kentucky and everybody devastated by that. I forgot to mention that at the start of the show. I've been watching the footage on what's happening out of there. And so my thoughts and prayers and all the love to everybody who's been impacted by that. And so if you have any extra love to send their way, please do that. That, my friends, is it for me for the day. I will see everybody here tomorrow. Sleep very well, my friends. Bye-bye.